What are the 4 stages of a tech career, and what's the secret to moving between them? I'm Josh, software exec, former startup founder and consultant, and on this channel we crack open the secrets of the software industry. So you've started your career in tech, or maybe you're midway into it, right? And now you're wondering, where do I go from here? If only there was a framework for building your career. As it turns out, there actually is. And it's a standard framework that's used by major firms globally, like Korn Ferry, or learning institutions like Harvard. This is the same framework that can be applied across the board to almost any profession. But I think it sticks particularly well with engineering and software because of the really structured nature of the profession, at least on the early on levels. And that's actually one of the hurdles to cross when moving through your career. Something like this framework can help with that. See, starting out, engineering is really structured. You're given a problem to solve, and then you solve it, right? There's usually one or several optimal solutions, and you're rewarded for solving that, and you're given your next problem, and you move on. But if you move up that ladder, the structure begins to get a bit looser, right? You're no longer trying to solve a simple problem with an optimal solution. Now what you're doing is you're looking at multifaceted problems, right? You're weighing the pros and cons of different routes and trying to make those decisions. And then farther down the line, that structure really just melts away because you're dealing less with problem solving and software and more with problem solving people, right? And that can be the really scary part, especially when you move from dealing with software all day to dealing with a team. So what is that framework? What are we talking about? What is the 4 steps to a tech career? So it goes like this. The first level is contributing. The second level is managing. The third level is leading. And the 4th level is representing. So how does this work, right? How does this explain the roadmap to your career? So for the most part, we start out in the contributing phase. This is where you're what's called an individual contributor, or IC, because you're solely responsible for your own contributions, right? The code that you deliver, the projects and the pieces that you specifically have control over. It's where we generally all start out, and it's kind of the baseline for your skills in the industry and where you do a lot of your initial learning. And over time, if you're good at your job, you tend to get promoted. This is what's called a merit-based promotion, right? And so to move from contributor to manager, you're mostly responsible for your own success based on your own work so far in the industry, right? And that aligns with what you've been doing as an individual contributor. So if we look at it as a sliding scale of merit versus opportunity, the scale is heavily, heavily weighted towards merit at this step, meaning there's plenty of opportunity to move from an IC up to a manager, but it starts to get tricky through the next phase. Because once you get into management, you're no longer solely responsible for yourself, right? Now you have a team. And generally, this is where we can start to fumble a little bit because the stuff that you learned in school, right? The stuff that started out your career, that was the first step, right? The contributor step. But now you've been put in a position to do something that you weren't really trained for. But if you think about it, it's really not that big a jump, right? To excel here, you just need to take the same skills that you were already applying, right? The ones that you're applying to yourself and apply them to your team, right? You built code, now you're showing others how to build code. Right? It's not that huge a leap. But it just requires a little shift in focus from doing it yourself to showing others how it's done. After management comes the leadership step. And this is tougher shift to make because now it's not so much about how well you've done as a manager, right? The merit part. Now it's about how much opportunity there is to find the leadership position. So that scale has shifted here a bit to the opportunity side. And so what that means is the skills that got you into management, they're not the skills that are going to get you to leadership. Now it's less about focusing on building your core competencies and more about building your reach within the company, how you bring teams together, how you communicate outside your team, and really importantly, how you present yourself externally. But also it's about finding the right opportunity. So it's tough because it's less in your control than before, right? As we go up this ladder, there's less and less positions available to move through. So it's less about just getting promoted because you're doing well and more about finding the opportunities that show up. But when you do get into leadership, that's when the game changes entirely, right? Because first you were building software, and then you were showing people how to build software. But now the name of the game switches to enablement. And here's where the structure that you were really, really used to just melts away. It's gone. Because now it's up to you to create the structures and the frameworks that the rest of your teams work within and to set them up for success in their individual roles. Now, some people do really well with that change, almost like being freed of the constraints that they were set up with, right? Being given the opportunity to create that environment that they would have wanted when they were at that IC level, right? And even at the manager level. And if you felt like you spent all your time cutting through red tape and your ability to do that is what got you here, then now's the time to change the tape. On the other hand, some people can really struggle with the lack of structures in place and moving from management to leadership. But what you need to keep in mind is that just because you're not being given structure, not having it placed on you, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And some of it is now up to you to create that structure that you want to see. So you've got contributing, managing, leading, and now representing. And that's the final step. It's the C-suite, right? It's not necessarily a position that many people are going to find themselves in, or that many people even want to find themselves in. All the things that got you into the field are completely gone. And moving from leadership to representing, it's fully shifted the skills to opportunity, right? Your skill as a leader, right? It's important, but it's only a small part of the ability to move vertically now. It's really limited to your networking at this point and to the opportunity of available positions, which is like the biggest limiting factor at that point. But why is that called representing? It's because if you look at what the C-suite actually does, it shifts from an internal focus on the company to an external focus. Right now, you are one of the faces of the company and to the company, right? You're leading at the head by example, and a whole lot more people see you than actually interact with you. And that visibility is what makes a representative of the company and what defines a lot of what you do. So there we go. That's contributor to manager to leader to representer. So what do you think of the framework? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I also have another video up here on how decisions are made and how that changes the higher up in that org structure you go. So give that a check out. If you found this video helpful, please like the video. If you're looking to make a career move, or maybe you've used this framework before, tell me about it in the comments. And if you'd like to see more videos on software in the tech industry, follow the channel. There'll be more coming soon.